Mukam karoti bachalam panghum langayet kirim yat kipa tamaham bande paramananda madhavam. A warm and pleasant good evening to one and all. It is a moment of extreme pleasure to welcome each one of the 2-week national workshop on educational research methodology, which is organized by Center for In-Service Teacher Education, National Sanskrit University, Tirupati. Today is the 6th day, 4th session of this workshop. I am heartily welcome to our dynamic, motivated, caring, enthusiastic Director of the In-Service Teacher Education, Professor P. Venkatrao sir, Workshop Coordinator, innovative, knowledgeable, resourceful, elegant, Professor R. Chandrasekhar sir, creative and workaholic, additional coordinator, Dr. Alok Mandal, Dr. M. Adina Nayak, Dr. Lakshman Kumar, Dr. G. Narasimha Murthy sir. Here, and also myself. And dear colleagues and most beloved scholars and students, we learned so many things before 5 days from different resource persons in India. Now I would like to extend on especially welcome to distinguished, energetic, inspiring, passionate resource person, Dr. S. Prabhu Shankar sir. He is working as an associate professor and head Department of Education, Government Institution of Advanced Study in Education, Autonomous, Chennai. He completed his PhD and MPhil in Education, MSc, Psychology and Mathematics. He qualified UGC, JRF and NET in Education. He worked as a research fellow, research assistant, research scientist. He has a 23 years experience in teaching in postgraduate and undergraduate level. He has a 20 years research experience. He published 39 research articles in Standard Referred Journal and 8 papers are in UGC Care listed journal. He published 3 research papers in internationally referred journal. He guided 29 MPhil students, 54 PG students and 3 PhD students. He recognized supervisor to guide MPhil and PhD candidate of Tamil Nadu Teacher Education University, Chennai. He is a member of so many university committees like member of Government State Research Guidance Cell, member in Books Purchase Committee, member of Academic Board and Board of Studies, member of Research Committee. He is serving as a subject expert in Government of Tamil Nadu. He attended and organized so many national, international seminars, workshops and symposium training program. Put your hands together. Let's welcome Professor Prabhu Shankar to take a session. I hope this session will be great and successful. I hope you will enjoy the session. Thank you for joining us. Please take sir.
Most respected Professor Venkatrao sir, most respected Dr. Chandrasekhar sir, respected assistant professors, research scholars and dear students, my very humble pronouns to each and every one of you present here. So I am happy to be a part of this wonderful research methodology workshop, and definitely I am handling 3 sessions for you. Basically, I am a maths professor appointed in Government Arts and Science College. Later, I shifted myself to Teachers College. So hopefully, I will be interpreting all the areas that was given to me in a strictly mathematical and statistical way. Hopefully you will be enjoying the sessions, because there will be some of the most eye-opening areas, definitely with a new perspective, because all the areas that was given to me for the 3 sessions are quite impressive. And firstly, this is the area that I am going to handle now, and I will tell some of the most vital aspects that you may be finding in some of the standard texts. Because there are textbooks that gives you what is nominal, what is ordinal, what is interval, and what is ratio scales. At MD level or at PhD level, we'll be referring to certain standard books like John W. Best, Louis Cohen, Matt Henn, Mark Weinstein. These are the books that we are commonly referring to. Beyond our own R.N. Sharma, then J.C. Agarwal, Kulbir Singh Sidhu. So beyond these books, there are certain other books by Routledge and Sage Publications that interpret the same areas in a very different, from a very different perspective, and these are not a very general terminologies, because while doing our M.Ed or M.Phil or PhD, we will be discussing over this in 1 class or 2 class, but hopefully when you come to interpret the same areas while you categorize all this, when you are going for SPSS, once you go for data collection, then you will be applying all these areas while you are creating your master table for SPSS, then definitely we will be having certain doubts on categorizing data. So what is nominal, what is ordinal, what is interval, and what is ratio. And beyond that, there are certain statistical areas which I will be definitely throwing on light during the last 15 minutes. Then I will take the certain areas to the tomorrow's morning session. It will be very much enjoying to you, and even a non-statistical person also would definitely be having a very wonderful experience when we really interpret everything on the basis of normal distribution, what professor was talking about. There is a single line. When I draw that line, definitely you will understand how much of significance that line holds, and what is a good mean, what is a good standard deviation, why we need to go for result scores, why we need to normalize the scores. And professor was talking during the break of what is the purpose of mean, what mean really does. When we find the central tendency measures, the basic measure is arithmetic mean, or finding out the average, what mean does. So this will all be very much interesting, and when you are applying, you find it very in-depth applications, and you will enjoy it when you do statistics. And even when you look up the statistical representations in any of the theses or journals, immediately you will identify, once after this session is over, or these sessions, my own 3 sessions are over, by just looking at any of the statistics, you will know, you will really tell whether this mean is a good mean or not, or whether this standard deviation is a good standard deviation or not. Why mean scores have to be generalized, why mean scores have to be centralized. So mean, everywhere we find, for biostatistics we have mean, for physical sciences we have mean, for us social sciences we have mean. Social science mean is different from bioscience mean. So our interpretation of how we find central tendency is different from how a physics person finds central tendency measure. For them, the central tendency measure may be anywhere they can fix. For us, it will be always central tendency. Why? Because we have category of students. We talk more on the averages. Okay. So there are certain scores that fall below 10. You would have heard about step 5 scores, 10 scores, 10 scores. Okay. So I'll throw light on all these areas, and hopefully you'll be following me. And these, whatever we interpret based on the scales, actually scales are primarily, these are not rating scales for the clarity of M.Ed students present here. Actually these are not the rating scales, or these are not the other scales that we use to collect data, but primarily to categorize data, to name data. Actually these are measures. Okay, these are measures which we often use in order to name, categorize, quantify, or quality to look the data in a quality perspective. Only for these reasons we use these 4 scales, and these scales ultimately not only serve as the basis for quantitative research but also for qualitative research. Because whenever we learn anything in research methodology in the present day context, we have to learn in 2 two major open perspective, that we are learning certain things for quantitative and we are learning certain things for qualitative. In the present day context, we use another term called mixed research methods, and nowadays almost any thesis you find in InflipNet or some international sites like ERIC Singapore network, or ERIC Canada, or ERIC US, you find much of the theses are carried only in the qualitative perspective. And some of the theses are both qualitative and quantitative, which I often refer to mixed research methods. So when I say if it is a nominal scale, generally nominal scale we always go along with categorizing of certain data with regard to quantification of variable or quantification of measurement, like thesis. When we do our own dissertations in a quantitative way, we use nominal data, we use quality data, we use this other scales like ordinal, interval and thing. But nowadays whatever we learn, we have to learn in another new, with a new perspective, that we have to learn it with a sense of understanding it, and it did for qualitative research. Okay. Then I'll throw light on what is qualitative research, how does it differ from quantitative research, and how these measures are to be quantified and also to be applied for qualitative research. When I say I'm not going to go for presentation, I leave this presentation with you, all the three presentations with you. I'm just going through the slides, so for your own sake, I just try to explain what is nominal, what is interval in a very simple way. So whenever it is nominal, it is name, like the category. The first two measures are primarily used for qualitative scaling. In the sense, qualitative scale means you cannot quantify it directly. Okay, you have to code it, then quantify it. Whenever it is quality data, firstly you have to code it, then only you have to quantify it. If I say sample subgroups, I think all the MD scholars or the PhD scholars are aware of APA 7th edition. There are certain standard terminologies that are being used in APA. Some call it, some of us call it as environmental variables. Some call it as demographic variables. Some of us will name it as personal variable. The term that is widely being applied in APA is APA 7th edition is sample and sample subgroup. If it is variable, subvariables. Okay. If I say adjustment is a variable, home adjustment, health adjustment, emotional, social are all subvariables of home adjustment. So subvariables of adjustment. Likewise, when I say sample subgroup, it is you have a sample like undergraduate students or 9th standard students. If you say 9th standard students in one particular area, then you are categorizing the samples like gender, locality, the type of school they study, the medium of instruction. All these are the sample subgroups. And beyond these subgroups, nowadays there is a compulsion for us to have certain subgroups based on the tool that you are selecting, based on the variable that you are selecting. There is one book published by Routledge entitled 21st Century Educational Research that talks more about having sample subgroups, extending sample subgroups for variables. Okay, and it also talks about certain important things like we go for review of literature of the previous studies. It calls for review of related literature for tools. Okay, because tool is carrying your research. The research tool that you are applying is carrying the entire research. It calls for a review of tools. So likewise, there are many innovative perspectives that are coming in. So when I say sample subgroups, it not only deals with the sample. 2 or 3 subgroups you should have from your variable. For example, if you select mental health as variable, for which there is a sample, you have 5 sample subgroups. Actually, the sample subgroups numbers are also enumerated, should be enumerated in a meaningful way. You should not have too many sample subgroups. Okay, too many. Like what is your blood group, what is your parental qualification, what is your mother's qualification, what is the income, how many siblings are there in the family. Lot of details are not basically necessary. Even when you refer to international thesis, they will go in for very few subgroups. Whatever is most necessary for your research, you should have it as a sample subgroup. So where all these are applied primarily is that whenever you are collecting personal data from the sample, like gender, maybe male, female or boy, girl. So that is one area where you are applying a scale. Then again you go for sibling order in the family. So you should not collect too many subgroups, as I have already told you. whatever is more expected for the study, that only you should collect. And there should be legitimate terms that should be used while scaling. Like you should not go for categorizing an individual based on poor, when asking for the father's qualification, you should not use the term illiterate. Instead, you can use schooling level or undergraduate level. So legitimate terminology should be used when you go for collecting data for scaling purpose. Likewise, you should not go for asking religion. Likewise, you should not go for asking even the locality sometimes, because in some of the UK-based universities, they offend you for even going for basic subvariable called male and female. There they will not generally go for. Obviously, the fact is that male and female will differ in certain perspectives. So that itself is not legitimate in certain countries. So the most important aspects of the subgroups only to be collected. So while collecting those subgroups, you have to name it appropriately, and you have to categorize it once you are transporting, you are exporting your data to the SPSS. So primarily nominal is naming of is name. You can remember nominal as names like gender, like locality, like type of school, or like medium of instruction, stream of study, science, arts. So whichever is more relevant to your study, you just collect those details and you can use nominal scale in order to name it. So ordinal scales are those that have a ranking like system called 1, 2, 3. So if you are really doing a study concerning for you to know about the sibling order, then you may be asking about whether you are a first born, second born, or third born. So it is 1, 2, 3 you will be using. So in that particular instance, you can apply ordinal scale. So ordinal is order or sequence. In that way you can remember ordinal, order or sequence. Whenever there is a sequence, or whenever there is a order, or whenever there is a choice, or whenever there is a preference, then you can use that particular instance like a particular instance as ordinal. Where all these are applied? Actually all these are applied whenever you are exporting your data from a general tool to your master table, and your master table to SPSS or AMAS or R. Okay, whenever you are exporting this, they will ask for, the software will ask for whether it is a categorical variable, or whether it is a nominal variable, or whether it is an interval variable or a ratio variable. So the first two is basically a qualitative scaling. The second two is basically quantitative, purely quantitative scaling. And interval scale, we have many applications. We have so many applications, and whenever you are collecting personal data, or whenever you are even going for having subvariables of a dependent variable or an independent variable, so those subvariable and the value of those subvariables are categorized into interval basis, interval data. So interval, whenever I say interval, the the zero is a non-absolute or inabsolute zero. Okay, you have minus, if I say temperature, you can have minus 4 to plus 4. So interval, the zero value will differ actually. Whenever you are going for, even you can have minus ranks, sometimes minus ranking system, minus marks. If you are going for collecting achievement scores, some may fail, and for competitive exams, some of the individuals will have minus marks. So even if you want to bring them in your master table, then you can go in for using interval scales. Whenever it is interval, the zero is inabsolute. So this is the basic understanding of having an interval scale, and the widely used scale is interval scale, and the ultimate use is the ultimately applied for whichever data you are collecting, you can fit in one set of scaling. So that scaling is called as the ratio scale, which is the ultimate scale that we will be often using. So in ratio scale, zero has a meaning. Zero is a ordinate, and zero, if I say zero itself will have an absolute value. And the thing, if there is nothing in a place, you say nothing in the particular place. So if you say that none of them are present here in the hall, it means something. So none of them are present in the hall. So zero is absolute. So this one particular question is often being repeated even in your net examinations. So in which one of the following scales zero is absolute? In which one of the following zero is inabsolute? In which is arbitrary? And arbitrary is interval. So absolute is ultimately your ratios. So likewise you should remember the basics of all this. So we'll get into some of the major applicational areas of these particular scales. Please, next thing. Okay. So data collection, when we collect data, the application of these scales, maybe in the MBA class we may not have much time to discuss on the application of why these scales, how these scales are getting transferred, where these scales are being applied. So whenever you go for collecting data are of many types basically. So qualitative data and quantitative data, as I already told you. So whenever you are applying some quantitative perspective to a study, you collect some data based on the quantity. Like when you ask for what is the rank, so previous marks and all that. So it is purely quantitative. There you can apply the last two, I mean interval and ratio. So if it is qualitative, you apply the first two, nominal and ordinal. So this is the primary. So there are three types of data generally: primary, secondary and tertiary data sources. And here I have put in only the primary and secondary. Tertiary data sources are basically from documents, from encyclopedias, from Britannicas and from other general collections. So here primary data is the most important data which a serious researcher has to really depend on. So there are two types of research generally is being spoken about in academic context. One is serious research. All academic research are basically serious research, and other researchers are causal researchers. So causal researcher are basically meant with is connected with the experimental studies, causal research. So here's other research that is theoretical, that is descriptive, that is purely of verbal description. All those research are categorized into serious academic research. So for serious academic research, the data collection will be in different contexts. So when you are really conducting a research, especially for projects, they will look in for certain qualitative data too. Especially when you apply projects to ICSSR or IPR, they will go in for, they will see your capacity as a researcher, whether you can go in for qualitative research primarily, then your ability to quantify it. So think of doing qualitative data. So this is what I am just stressing upon with the young researchers. So whenever you write a research proposal or whenever you select a topic, see that you select a topic based on the qualitative perspective. Okay. So there are certain there are many types of data. There are whenever there is a study, like what are the various studies? You say observation, interview, rating, interview, case study, case history, case methods. So you say many, and anecdote, autobiography. So these are the very many means, very many methods by which you collect data. So all methods will not give you quantity-based data. Some of the methods will give you qualitative data. So some of the qualitative data methods are observation, interview, sociometry, this anecdote. Here the role of the researcher is too large. In quantitative research, the role of the researcher is very less because the data will play a major role in quantitative research. But in qualitative research, the researcher will play a major role, whereas he uses the data to interpret. So knowledge of the researcher is really explicit in qualitative research, and knowledge of the researcher is very much limited in quantitative research. Okay? So your data tells you whether you are doing your qualitative research or quantitative research. Likewise, even to apply your ordinal, nominal in certain circumstances like sample selection, defining sample numbers, parameter, population, you apply all those scales. So which defines your sample numbers? What defines your sample number? Because in nowadays when we go to certain private colleges, they say, when we go to certain private colleges for examinations or to universities, they say that all the students, the HOD or the person who is in charge of the college will say to me that almost this year, sir, all the 50 students, we have asked them to collect 500 samples. So is it good or not? Is it true or not? Is that hold any significance? What determines the sample number? The sample number could not be defined by the supervisor. The sample numbers could not be defined by the researcher. The sample numbers are defined purely by the study you choose, study you prefer. Okay? You cannot have so many samples for whenever you are planning to conduct research in special education. Your samples will be very very limited, maybe numbers. Then we say it is smaller samples, like n lesser than 10, n lesser than 30. For T, in some of the contexts, some of the books, it will be given like n, whenever n lesser than 30, they call it a small sample, and n greater than 30, it is mentioned as large sample. But it is not so actually. Actually, the context is that if you say n lesser than 30, you can take it for small sample. So n lesser than 10, n lesser than 30, n lesser than 20, based on the study. For an experimental study, we go for 80 samples. Then again, it is a small sample. For 120 samples, of which 60 control, 60 experimental. And again, if it is a Solomon 4 group design in experimental study, this 60 is divided into 30-30, and the next 60 will be divided into 30-30. And again, it is small sample. Okay. So the sample numbers are basically enumerated or elucidated based on the technique that you are applying. In general, you call n lesser than 30 as small sample. Actually, it is so. For T, for applying Mann-Whitney U-test, for very small sample to find out significant difference between two groups, because these are the conditions based on which we are applying all this. Tomorrow I will connect why we are learning so much in order to learn what is interval, what is ordinal, what is ratio and all that. We have this many stratifications are necessary in order to understand these four scaling process. Okay. So as I told you, so when n is lesser than 30, if you apply t-test, actually it will not, sometimes most of the times if you sit in SPSS or if you work in Excel, you will understand that it will not give significance. At instances whenever you are not getting significance with small samples, you go for applying Mann-Whitney U-test. There are more interactive software. There is no need for you to go for learning all the formulas, nothing. But tomorrow I will write all the formulas there. But beyond that, there are interactive softwares where you can simply type some of the softwares like Wasserstats, VASSARSTATS, SoftStats, and Minitab, GraphPad, QSort. All these online softwares will give you wonderful ready-made screens in order to just input your values. You can get the outputs. So to understand the conditions, we are learning all this. So whenever n lesser than 30, when you apply t, certain instances, because when the mean value does not differ significantly in smaller samples. Okay, only 30. The mean will be what? There will not be much difference in the mean. When the sample is less, the mean values naturally it will not differ. So whenever the samples are more, there is a possibility that the mean value differ. Okay. So what is a good sample for a large study, like for your M.Ed thesis or your MPhil or PhD? Previously, we have certain tables given by Morgan, and some of the softwares also will give you an idea about selection of sample numbers from the population. Actually, to go through certain books, the recent books, international books, it talks about meaningful samples, not very strictly 10% of the population or not very strictly 30% of the population. It does not talk like that. Some statistical books, wonderful books, it talks about going for meaningful samples. If it is a M.Ed dissertation for a general topic, if you collect some 200 samples to 300 samples, it is a wonderful sample. If not, at least 180 and above. With the precise statistics available, statistical softwares available, you can get a wonderful statistics. Okay, whatever statistics. For which the tools has to be very precise. In case even the sample size is too large, when the tool is not perfect, you will not achieve any significance. The tool has to be very perfect, very perfect. So for making the tool very perfect or to making the tool very technical, you have to work on a lot.
based on these 4 elements, these 4 scalings. Okay, so this many number of ideologies are necessary in order to understand the 4 scaling techniques. Okay, so then what again is a good sample for M.Ed dissertation for a general descriptive study with this many precise softwares available like SPSS, QRS, so now AMAS and ours. We have some meaningful, the present day book, as I told you, some of the greatest works on statistics talks about precise or in general a meaningful sample. It is not actually 10% of the population. Now the population is too large. Previously the population is considerable population, from which if it is 100, you can say 10% of 100 is 10, it is meaningful. Now when you say population, it is 1 lakh, of which 10% is impossible for even a PhD scholar to collect. So it talks about, in the present day context, it talks about meaningful sample. So while you go for meaningful software, meaningful sample numbers, again you have to ask a question about what are the stratifications in order to deduce the sample based on certain stratifications. So you have to, you write limitations, you are writing delimitations in your study. Likewise you have to, in the 3rd chapter, like sampling procedure, in that stratification of sample. So any serious academic research, generally we go in for, we don't go in for purpose, we don't go in for judgment. Generally we go for random sampling. You have 2 classifications, no probability, non-probability sampling. In probability you have certain samples like simple random, stratified random, all this. Generally we go in for serious academic research, we go in for stratified random sampling. For law, even for experimental, even for a special education study, even for a survey, we generally going for stratified random sampling. Else simply say it is random sampling based on certain stratifications. Okay, the stratifications, as a researcher you define the stratifications based on which you are collecting the data. So for all this, the understanding of the different scaling procedures are very much important. Okay, so that is why you have to know different areas and different perspectives of why we use scaling. So this many ideologies you need to construct or you need to work upon, especially on the statistical elements. So you can call one data as a categorical data or as a nominal data, where the same data you can try to claim it as, or you can try to project it for a software purpose, for a significance purpose, to achieve a significance. You can redefine the same ordinal data as a ratio data or an interval data. Okay, by means of coding or by means of transforming or by means of transposing. There are certain techniques. Okay, transposing is one technique by which you convert a nominal score into a ratio score. So the subject is very deep basically. I just wanted to throw a light upon the basics of what is what, and then you have time to really develop upon it. So these are some of the primary, then you please come. Okay. So secondary data, just get out please. So come to the next slide, so please. Okay. So maybe I'm not going with this presentation, so just please. The next slide, sir. Okay. So here you say, here you can see the sequence that is expected of a question that you are posing. In the sense, to collect data, you may ask for subsample, subgroup of the sample. You may ask certain details like how you are interacting with others, whether you like certain systems or not, where you stand with the system. So there is a sequence, ranking format, in which they may rank. So these ranks can be taken in for feeding while developing your master table, and in those points, the ordinal, you have to mention the scale as ordinal scale. Because whatever you are mentioning, based on that only the SPSS will do the software. The particular software will do the analysis. The data analysis will be done only by the inputs that you are giving. So once if you are wrongly, in the sense if you are mistakenly giving one, defining one particular style with the other one, definitely the results will not be as expected. Okay. So you have to define it in a very proper way, and there is a need for conversion of certain scales, you have to convert it. So the conversions I tell you later, how to convert based on the very many statistical applications that we are using. In case if the averages are not perfect averages, in the sense, what is a perfect average? As I already told you, our statistics is social statistics, in which we expect a good mean. So what is a good mean? What is the higher end of mean and what is the lower end of a good mean? So the lower end of a good mean, somewhere between 39 to 69, will be a good mean, an appropriate mean. So if it crosses the boundary of 69, then it enters the third quartile. Okay. When it crosses the lower boundary, when it gets below 39, it is entering the first quartile range. And it cannot be 50 also all the time. It cannot be there. So you are collecting, because some of the studies we can see, the mean scores will be very less, in the sense 2.5, 12.5. The mean scores itself they will present in this way, but it should not be presented. So whenever, for whatever the total may be for which you collect the data, and you finalize the scores, whenever you are finalizing, you have to convert it into percentage, especially for PhD thesis. Without converting the basic scores into the percentage scores, the statistics that you are doing will not hold any meaning. It simply looks like small scale statistics, because in many theses it is a problem. The tool will have only 20 items, maybe with three dimensions, like agree, strongly agree, or undecided. Ultimately 3 into 20 is 60. So you collect data, ultimately it comes somewhere to 40, 45. And if you go with the same mean, the mean scores will be very less, 21, 22, you will get the mean like that. So whatever for the total score you are getting for your tool, you have to go in for converting it into percentage. I will show you a master table tomorrow, by which you can apply why these particular scaling are very much important when you are converting. So what is a perfect standard deviation again? So the maximum of the standard deviation score should be somewhere between 19 to 20 or 21. If it comes beyond 21, it seems it is entering the first quartile. What is standard deviation? Why standard deviation? Where standard deviation is applied? So that we'll look in tomorrow. For simple knowledge, I tell you, when I scatter certain marbles here in the room, if I have 50 marbles, I throw in the center of the room, and if it gets almost accumulated at one corner, you say there is no standard deviation. There is no standard deviation. If it scatters meaningfully throughout the room, throughout the hall, you say the standard deviation is good. So this we apply in data collection process. So when we say data collection, generally MEd and PhD scholars, when a PhD scholar is asked to collect data around 500 numbers, what they generally do, they go to one college or two colleges or three colleges, they collect all the 600, because there are many sections in a school. In one school itself you can collect the entire data, you can come back to say your professor that I have collected data. But this will definitely be reflecting in your statistics. Statistics will never lie. Okay, statistics will tell truths. So likewise, the simple concept of good data collection is that many number of schools, each school small amount of data. So this is what is meant by data collection based on good standard deviation. The standard deviation will be very good. You prefer, when you want to collect 200 the data from 200 samples, see that one school you go to collect 22 or 25 samples, and the other school you go collect 30, 32. Then the other school, if it is only 10, it is well and good. So likewise, you should collect with so many schools, so little sample with each school, then the standard deviation will be very good. The normal distribution also will be very good. So these are the very basics that determines your scaling procedures. Because when you do statistics, generally statistics is not done generally by the individual. In the present day context, none of the scholars, maybe the MEd scholars or the PhD scholars, they depend on some statistician. The statistician will run the data, they will send the thing, then the researcher will only write the interpretations. But basically, what the statistician will do, they will try to manipulate if there is no significance achieved. There are two problems while you are trying to do the statistics. One is that for everything there will be significance if you are trying to manipulate the data. And the other end is that you don't get any significance throughout. Why? Because the tool is not okay, the number of items are not okay. Okay, what is the minimum number of items that you should have? then what the statistician will do, he will try to convert the ordinal variable into nominal and the ordinal variable into interval. So he will try to do this. Maybe you may not know what he is doing, but he will try to achieve some statistical significance. Ultimately, it is known when a good examiner is evaluating the thesis. Okay, so you should know, you should understand there are certain extents, there are certain points where you should work on your own in order to understand what statistics is. Okay, as I have already told you, there are certain statistics. Okay. So this is the mid. This we call it as mean, median, and mode point. This 0 to 100. And here we have quartile 2, here we have quartile 1, this is the 25th part, this is the 50th part, and this is the 75th part. So this is Q3. Okay, this is called as the interquartile range. This is called as interquartile range. And you have statistics for this also, 10, 9, 5. So 5 you call it as step 5, standard scores of 5, you have a measure. If someone is trying to conduct a study with only five numbers, like a case study for some special education research, or only for 10 students, you are selecting 10 students, you are considering 10 students as individuals, you are trying to do a statistics, there is a statistical possibility, you can go for even for 6 also, you have called statistics. Okay, tomorrow I will give you all the formulas. Okay, all the formulas is there in the presentation. Since I am not going with the presentation, I am not depending on that. So this is stanine, STANINE. The most used statistic below 10 is this stanine and STEN. Okay, you can apply. As I have told you, I will give you certain names of the statistical softwares. Like one is very important, GraphPad. You can take it down if you don't know. GraphPad, Minitab, and WasserStats, SoftStats. So these 4 are totally interactive. Any statistics you can find, you can yourself do. Whether it is, even if you want to, if there are certain statistical parts that is present in your syllabus, like Crooksell-Wallis test, Wilcoxon-Stein rank, Mann-Whitney U test, or else Kolmogorov inequality, anything you can find with these 4 softwares. As a M.Ed scholar, even with a very basic understanding of what statistics is, you can simply sit in the system, you can open an interactive software page for the softwares, you can do it on your own.
So these softwares can be used both parametric and non-parametric?
Yeah, for certain parametric, we can go in for standard, like Excel will do.
Can we use these softwares for both parametric and non-parametric?
Yes sir, we can use, sir. We can use. So for anybody who is selecting a sample, because it generally in Chennai used to go to NI NIPMED, it is a multiple disability institute, where almost all the student sample size will be very much lesser. Like one student sample will be 50, another student sample will be only 10, 12. In those contexts, the generally used statistics are these. Okay, STEN, STENN and all that. So for our understanding, in general, the social statistics will talk about achieving a good mean. Okay, achieving what is a good mean, what is a good higher mean, what is a good lower mean. So why you should not, why the mean score should not come below the quartile, why there is a need to convert it for percentage. So when you talk about master table, how to interpret the independent variable with the sample subgroup. Okay, so I will give an idea about all this by tomorrow. Here you have all the master table will have 3 areas. Like the first area will be the sample area. Sample area in the sense your gender, male, female, then type of school, Telugu medium or English medium, type of school, government school, private school, all this will be sample area. And independent variable 1, if you have only one variable. If you have 2 variables, independent variable 2. So these are one area. And the other area is your dependent variable area. So if this is your master table. So whenever you have independent variable, you should have certain dimensions. So in the present day context, with the coming of the many private colleges, they are not going for the proper structure of the study. In this presentation also I have mentioned, understand the structure of the study. What is the basic structure according to APA? how APA defines educational research. If you have an independent variable, definitely you should have a dependent variable. You should have sample subgroups. So this makes your study complete. If you say simply a study on socio-economic context of slum children, there is no dependent variable. So you are studying the socio-economic context for what? Trying to find out the influence on some factor, trying to find out the determining variable. So nothing is there on the right hand side. So the structure of the study will always be like this. Independent variable 1 tends to dependent variable. Whether it is an experimental study or a descriptive study, the structure is this. If it is a MN, it is only one variable you have here. If it is a PhD, you have 3 or 4 variables, then a dependent variable. Or else here you have 1 or 2 variables. This side you will be having 1 or 2 variables. Okay. The major variable will be dependent variable. Dependent variable are basically dependent on many factors. Like achievement, academic achievement, you say it is primarily dependent on many factors. Like personality, if you say personality, it is dependent on so many factors. So the major variables will be here. The minor variables will be generally studied like anxiety, your stress. If it is psychological variables, your anxiety, emotional stability, feeling of insecurity. So a lot of variables. Okay. Your adjustment, there are a lot of variables. Okay. If it is an administrative structure, you can study total quality management. Okay. Here you can have total quality management. Here you can have the different dimensions like teacher effectiveness, job satisfaction, student, the capacity of students, the institutional infrastructure, all these contributing to total quality management. So understanding of the scales does not simply meaning understanding your scales alone, but you need to have a broad idea about all this. Then only you will know where to apply which scale while defining the context, the statistical context. So this is why we should know the very many basics and the score for perfect standard deviation. Why standard deviation should not be more than 19? If it is more than 19, it affects your quartile. Even though if you are not going for your finding out the quartile deviation, it affects your significance of the mean. Okay. Once if your standard deviation is more than 19, it seems your mean score is more than 78, 79. Okay, then it is perfectly a skewed mean. You know what is skewness? You know what is kurtosis? Skewness is lack of symmetry. Whether it is a positive skewness or negative skewness. The definition of skewness is this: skewness is lack of symmetry. When I say kurtosis, it is peakedness of a curve. Peakedness. You say you have a normal curve, the peakedness of a curve is kurtosis. Okay? When a perfectly normal curve, a plateau curve or a meso curve. This is a plateau curve, this is a meso curve, and this is a platycurtic, mesocurtic and leptocurtic. So this is kurtosis. Okay? Then you can go in for studying the properties of normal curve. So all these are essential knowledge in order to understand that, because whenever we say scales in the context of research, we simply study scales just for 5 marks. So that is not so in the present day context. Whenever you are applying statistics in, whenever you try, you want to do statistics using softwares. Okay. So if it is AMAS, it expects a different scaling. When it is R, I hope that you maybe in course of time you are exposed to these softwares compulsorily when you are going for higher education. Then ultimately you will understand what I am talking about. So if it is R, it expects certain different types of scaling procedures. So then you should be knowing about all this. Okay, why the weightage of the tool? What is the minimum number of, because when you simply apply one scale like interval scale or ratio scale, you cannot expect significance. So the minimum number of items in a tool defines the significance of a scale. Significance. Okay. So what is the minimum number of items in the present in the context? In the present day context, you see many PhD theses coming out with only 30 items for one variable. Maybe if it is another variable, they will have 20 items altogether. They will have only 50 items. With that, they will complete the research. And when you look into the statistics, everything will be significant. But ultimately, when some thesis tells you everything is significant, then it is manipulated. Okay, you cannot get significance only with very few number of items. Even to run what is factor analysis, because I have seen in your schedule that you are learning item analysis, factor analysis and all that. When you are a very serious research scholar, when you sit in front of the system to do factor analysis for a very long time, you understand that a minimum required number of items will be somewhere between 45 and 55. If it is less than 45 items, definitely it is very difficult to get to run a factor analysis table. You should have a minimum number of items. So these are the very many important aspects budding researchers definitely you should take into mind. Whenever whenever you say it is a tool, the tool should have a minimum number of this many number of items, like 45 items or 55 items minimum. Primarily you write many number of items, then while correcting you just get through with the numbers. Then again it should not be too reduced, it should have meaningful number of items. And then the dimensions of the tool, you should have certain dimensions. So without dimension there is no tool. But nowadays when you go to certain private colleges, they simply tell I have developed this tool. If you ask for a tool on mental health, they say that I have developed 60 items, I have given and collected, that's all. Then what statistics you will do with that particular tool, what scaling you will define, you cannot define with only one. Out of 120 you have certain scores, then what is the purpose of all this scaling? So any tool you say, it will have certain dimensions. Then again the number of dimensions should not be like in sample. What the mistake that we generally do is, if you get into some thesis, 75 male, 75 female, then 150 government school students, 150 private school students. So sample structure will not be like this when you say your samples are selected at random. Okay, this is a manipulated sample. So samples will be somewhat comparably greater and lesser. So that is why we use mean. You say I have for male it is only 38 students available. For female, if the sample size is 200, the male are only 38. The female are around 162 and 38. So to take out the difference in the numbers, we do mean. We are normalizing the difference existing between the numbers. Here only we have 38 male, 162 female. So when you find out the mean, the difference in the numbers are lost. You are almost normalized. The entire mean here, for the large number of females and for the smaller number of male, once you find out mean, the differences in the numbers are you have taken out the difference. So that is why we call mean as a normalizer. Mean as a normalizer. Mean as a normal measure, good measure. Okay. So once if you know why mean is a normal measure, then you will know. Then you will when you apply this interval or ratio scale, you apply it meaningfully. Okay. When you don't understand the significance of why you do mean, why you do standard deviation, why you are applying quartile deviation, definitely you will not define the scales properly. Don't think the scales are defined only for the subgroups of the sample. The scales are defined even for your variables that you are selecting. Even for the sake of variables, you are defining your sample. For the sake of getting significance, you are selecting you are defining your scales. And for the sake of what statistics you are selecting, you are defining your scales. Okay. If it is a T, at what instance you should go for applying interval or ratio scale? I'll tell you tomorrow when I am handling T value. So likewise, the concept is very deep. Okay, especially when you learn, keeping in mind the application of the software, how the software thinks, or what the software does when you are applying the scale. When you differ with the scale, what the result you are getting. When you have this particular idea, when you sit before a system, you can see a moderate result. You can see a result that is very moderate or that is not basically significant. The overall result is not significant. Then you will understand the need for these scales. Okay. So there are certain studies that expects only qualitative outcomes. Like if you say chi-square is basically applied for, chi-square does not take in the values actually. If all of them have taken, one of them have taken 80 marks and the next person has taken 90 marks, Chi-square does not take into account how much of marks they have taken. Chi-square only takes the frequencies, how many of them. Okay, here how many of them. So this is the basic definition of chi-square. That is why we call chi-square as a contingency measure. It is a study of the frequencies. It is not the study of the values. In that particular context, what scale you are applying is very, very important. What scale or what? Okay, if it is boys and girls, or if it is a variable. If you have one variable called stress, if you have a dependent variable called personality. In personality, you have 3 dimensions like introvert, extrovert, and ambivert. In stress, you have low stress, average stress, or else eustress, distress, and stress. So, in this particular context, when you create a table, the scale that you are applying there is what scale? You are applying there is there is no the last 2 scales you are not applying. Ratio or the interval scale you are not applying. You are applying a ordinal scale. You are applying ordinal scale. So this is what I just wanted you to really put your efforts to understand for what statistics we are using this. So similarly, when you go for finding out a regression, what is the basic correlation between regression and correlation? Correlation does not take into account the cause and effect. It simply correlates. You give the value of certain values. Here you get certain values. It simply correlates. Okay, and it shows the strength of correlation, whether it is simply correlated or whether it is highly correlated or moderately correlated. But what regression does? Regression takes into account the cause and effect. If you say, for example, if there is a fight between an husband and wife, in correlation generally says there is a fight. Correlation says there is a fight. This degree of understanding is there between them. So this is what correlation says. But in regression, it tells who is the cause. Okay, it inquires who is the cause. So X on Y or Y on X. So this is the major difference between regression and correlation. When you apply certain values in order to do statistics for regression, so what scale we apply? Regression takes into account the values. Like correlation, that chi-square will take only the frequency, then you are applying the ordinal scale. But for regression, so it takes into account what? Whether it is interval scale or whether it is a ratio scale. You have to define. It is an interval scale. So likewise, you should get a clarity. You should get a clarity for what statistics we have to define, what scale. So this is the primary objective of this particular topic. Okay, the primary objective of these four about learning of these 4 scales is that you should know where to define what. Okay, whether it is we apply everywhere. When we apply sample subgroups, when we apply descriptive statistics, when we apply inferential, beyond that there are certain applications like path analysis, your factor analysis, even in item analysis, all this we apply. We should know what types. When I say item analysis are generally done for achievement test. When you have a closed answer, item analysis is possible. For rating scales, no, item analysis is not possible, but generally we call it as item analysis in a larger understanding. It is item total correlation or inter-item validity. So these 2 measures only we are doing, but we simply call it as item analysis. Item analysis are done basically for achievement tests, and in Stratum we can say item analysis cannot be conducted for psychological tests. Item analysis is not possible for psychological tests. But ultimately what you are trying to find and say is, you are trying to find whether each and every item is valid. For that you are trying to apply 2 statistics. One is inter-item reliability or item total correlation. Once if those values are within the scale, you say this item is accepted and rejected. Ultimately the process you call it as item analysis. That you should not mistake for the specific term item analysis. Okay, item analysis in achievement is generally done for 2 purposes. One is to find out the difficulty level, and the other one is to find out the discrimination index. But what you do in research is generally not the item analysis. You go for item total or inter-item reliability. And one more thing is that validity has an impact. of standardization. Actually, validity is done for certain, validity is truthfulness. If a ML scholar is developing a tool, or a PhD scholar is developing a tool and writing a research thesis, he should not write my tool is standardized. Because standardization is a longitudinal process. It takes more number of years for a tool to get standardized. You are finding simply the reliability, but you can say you are finding validity, truthfulness, validity of the tool for the present sample selected, for the present study. Okay, you have to define in this way, validity of the tool with regard to the present sample selected for the present study. Similarly, reliability of the tool for the present study and the present sample selected. Okay, you cannot simply say this is reliable, this is valid, and even in the thesis also you can just mention the item, the tool is tested for its validity, and the validity is found to be, and the reliability is this. For validity, I have applied this validity test like face validity, content, construct, concurrent, and predictive validity. There are many other validities, but these are the 5 basic validities of which you say one. And similarly, methods of reliability, you say whenever your reliability score is reliable, you have to say whether it is reliable based on test retest method, or whether it is split off method, or whether it is what? Rational equivalence and odd even reliability. There is another reliability that generally in all the theses we say, what reliabilities they talk about in general. When statistics is applied, Cronbach's alpha is found. They simply write that. Actually, Cronbach's alpha is K23. Okay? Kudir-Richardson formula 23 is Cronbach's alpha. So these are the general methods you say. So for finding out the reliability, for administering the tool, for taking the negative positive perspective of the tool in order to relate it with the sample, for all this you should know how to define your variable in specific for each of the aspects that you are expected. So this important is that the 4 scales, okay, that carries the significance of these statistical methods, the selection of variables, the defining of the variable and subvariables and all this. Okay, so these are the general concepts behind all these areas. Okay, I am not going with the presentation. Sorry for that. I leave the presentation with sir. You can later get it from sir. You can just go through it, sir, please. You can come to the last stage, the last 15 minutes. So all that we have spoken is there. Let us go to what is percentile, what is decile. Okay. So percentile, as I already told you, Q, there is only one formula. If you know the formula, what is the formula for median for continuous data? You know raw data. If you could get the presentation, you will know how to classify a frequency, what is cumulative frequency, what is general frequency, what is discrete and what is continuous, all this put in there. But generally for continuous data, what is Q? If I say Q1, what is the formula? So what is P10, what is P90, P75? Okay. If I say P50, what is that? Okay. So Q1, what is the formula? Quartile 1. Okay. So this is the one single formula. You can have all this. You can transform this particular formula. All this. Okay. 100. If it is a percentile of 10, you are finding out 10n divided by 100 minus m divided by f into c. That's all. So this is the lower end of the frequency. If I am writing this for 10n divided by 100 minus m divided by f into c. So this is for P10. So likewise you can write the formula for all the percentile points that you are finding out. Even if you want to find out a percentile point for 57, P57, you want to find 57th percentile. Then you can apply the same formula, 57n divided by 100 minus m divided by f.
Sir, excuse me, that Q represents what? Q1?
Yes, sir, this one, Q1, the first quartile, sir.
Quartile deviation.
Yes, sir, first quartile. Third quartile will be 3n divided by, this is n by 4, sorry, n by 4. So this is 3n divided by 4 for third quartile. So likewise, one single formula you can apply for finding out the percentiles for even for skewness. I have given certain formulas here. You can apply them. The statistics, the next few slides. So for the interpretation of statistical parts, I have given this. Which statistics, what you can, where you can apply. So that is what we were discussing previously. And even for higher level statistics also we have the same table. You can find it either from internet or from some standard text. Next one, please. So these are some of the scales that we generally depend upon. In the quality, the verbal scales, there are certain verbal scales. If you have a psychology laboratory, you can find verbal scales. It's purely semantic. Especially with staff selection commission, questions will be totally on semantic styles. Okay, like word analogy, verbal sentence completion, from missing word. So all that will be differential tests on semantics. The next one, sir, please. So this is what I am talking about. Ordinal scale, there the rank order correlation, permissible statistics. No, you can kindly go through that later because we have only this much of time, very limited time, within which I just wanted to explain everything. This is what I was explaining previously. If it is chi-square, what test you are applying there? Okay, nominal. And if it is rank order correlation and ANOVA, it is ordinal. So please take this table, please take a printout of this, you can really use this. The next one. The next one, sir, please. Okay. So classification of data, generally we classify data for certain purpose, and the purpose that we know is very limited. But when you do certain projects, you understand the same data will be they will ask, even ICSSR, they will be asking about whether data sets are available. What will be the futuristic application of the data set that you have collected? So these are the last two questions in the project proposal of ICSSR. So what is a data set? What is a sample data, a sample based data, and how you can use the data in further studies, for further research. So when you please try to download, you try to log into ICSSR website, you try to download the proposal format. In that you will see why related literature. Simply they would be giving why related literature to identify the research gap. And likewise, when you get down, the last question will be this. So how many data sets will you create from the present research, and what for these data sets will be used for further research, for carrying out further research. So the data sets are different. The data set that you are carrying, if you are conducting an academic research in this particular area, the same data set, whether it could be applied for some other area. So this is what, one data set used for a different purpose. Okay, so like geographical classification of data, chronological classification, especially generally we are exposed to review of literature. Nowadays there is a call to go for you try to collect reviews. In that also there are certain norms nowadays. What are catalogued reviews and what are non-catalogued reviews? For example, if a researcher staying here is trying to do a research, for example, for a MA candidate is trying to write review of related literature, and whatever related literature on academic achievement, it is the common variable that generally we use. And if a scholar is going to the library, taking all the previous thesis that is being carried out here, writing hundreds of reviews on academic literature. So those reviews are basically non-catalogued reviews. And even if a PhD scholar is trying to write so many reviews based on the InflibNet or based on the Eric India or Eric Madurai Kamarajar University or some university or Eric Delhi, they try to write. Ultimately, when you see all the names, most of the names will be Indian names, even in the Indian studies also. Even of the Indian names, you should try to present the catalogued reviews. Catalogued reviews are formal reviews, okay, that are internationally accepted for its worthiness, that are internationally present in a general domain. library cataloging system, or cataloging system of India, or cataloging system of Canada, or something like this. So while trying to collect review also, see that you are collecting cataloged reviews. You are presenting good reviews. So local reviews you cannot present. Like Venkatesan did one thesis, I am taking his tool for study. What study Venkatesan has conducted? Who has said Venkatesan study is a good study? One or two reviews you can depend if it is really good. But in general, if you are doing some study on, ultimately you should have one question in mind whenever you are going for review of literature. Whenever you are carrying out a study, ultimately you can expect this question from me. Please remember, if you are doing some study on bullying, who is the foremost researcher contributor to bullying? There are some international names, and somebody is doing some research on forestry, and there are certain international names that has contributed to forestry. So those names you should know. So that is the quality of the researcher. That is the purpose why we are expected to go for catalogued reviews. Are you following me? Okay. So this is the ultimate purpose. If somebody asks you in your Viva, so you say you have surveyed so many literatures. Ultimately, who is the major contributor of your study? If somebody asks you, what you will tell? If it is differentiated instruction, there are certain names. Okay, like there is one name called Amy. Without that, there is no differentiated instruction. If it is bullying, there is a Russian psychologist who concentrated more on bullying. So without that name, there is no study on bullying. So likewise, ultimately, you should be able to come out with good reviews, which ultimately moves your thesis, moves the ideology of your thesis. Okay. So likewise, you should please. I'll take another 2 or 3 minutes to.
No problem. You can.
So geographical classification, the chronological classification, the qualitative classification. So qualitative classification is very important, very important. Whenever you are conducting a study, qualitative study, even because some studies are being conducted by SCRT professors in Tamil Nadu belonging to Ooty, they simply say cleanliness habits among Toda children, as if they say that Toda children are not clean. They simply mean they don't bath often as we bath, because the place does not expect them to bath twice or thrice a day. Okay, so these studies are basically qualitative in nature. So whenever you are defining a qualitative variable, see that you are defining it in a very, very legitimate sense. Legitimate sense. Legitimate is something lawful. Okay, when you speak about women, when you speak about slum children, or when you speak about orphans, your definition of them should be proper, appropriate. And why you have chosen that particular sample, that definition also again should be very much specific, should be meaningful, should be towards a purpose. Okay, not towards some vague ideas. Okay, so similarly, quantitative classification of data. So all these are very important. Like as I already told you, whatever data is not necessary, please don't collect it. Okay, please don't collect it. Even if you refer to UNICEF, UNFPA, OECD, some of the international organizations like Spectrum 2030, when you go through all these documents, you find that they would have taken only three or four variables, 3 or 4 sub-variables. For the best quantification of data, they will take only 3 or 4. But in some studies in the Indian context, I see they will ask everything actually. Ultimately, at one point, they will even ask whether your father and mother is married. So when marriage happened. That actually, likewise, all the questions are put. 20 or 30 questions will be put. Okay. For the particular study, those questions are not contributing or not necessary at all. Okay. So these are some of the important things that you should remember whenever you are going for quantification of data. Whenever I say quantification, it is again interval and ratio scale. Whenever I say qualitative, it is ordinal and nominal. Okay. So when you keep reading it for 3 or 4 days continuously, definitely you will take in all the statistical aspects with the help of a professor or a good friend. The next slide, sir, please. So ultimately, what are the very many properties of measurement? These 4 measurements we have: ordinal, nominal, and interval and ratio. Ratio is the ultimate scale for quantification. And ordinal and nominal are ultimate for qualitative description of data, qualitative studies. So these are the 4 properties. You should remember it, like how you remember the types of validity and the methods of reliability. Whenever somebody asks you what are the properties of data scaling, you should say the identity of the data, the magnitude of the data, the interval of the data, and a minimum value of 0. You should see in for all these 4 characteristics. Okay, 2 characteristics are meant for the first 2. 2 characteristics are meant for the second 2. You cannot go for finding out a minimum value of 0 in the first 2, ordinal and nominal. You can see only it in the ratio and interval scale. Similarly, equal interval you can find it in the ratio and interval scale. You cannot find it in nominal and ordinal. The magnitude you can find only in nominal. The identity and magnitude you can find it in ordinal. It takes some time for you to really take in all this, but once you work, definitely you will understand. The next one. So this is the second part. Possibly I will try to do this particular part tomorrow. I will simply conclude this session by telling you what are Z scores, why we do Z scores. For dependent variable, generally if it is academic achievement, we go to a college or we go to a school, we collect the achievement scores. And we go to another school, we collect achievement scores. If it is 200 samples, we collect achievement scores. One achievement score will be of the midterm test. One achievement score will be of the final test or the first class test, simple class test. Ultimately, these scores that you have collected for achievement are not basically standardized. So how to make it standardized? It is by a simple process called Z scores. Then converting it into Z score will reduce the values of the achievement. But then again, how to convert it to percentage? By using T scores. These formulas are very simple. Tomorrow I will tell you all the formulas. The process is very simple. Only thing is you should make it clear to understand what we are conversating, what I am trying to put you in. Okay. So if you understand the context, definitely in course of time you will understand. You will find the significant formulas and everything. Okay. I will share the presentation, all the 3 presentations with Professor. Definitely these presentations are made with care and much are not copied from any source, because there are certain areas that really needed certain clarification that I have typed in personally, and see that these presentations will illuminate each one of you for different questions that you have personally. Okay. So with this I conclude the session since the time is 6. And thank you so much for your patient listening, and I am very much humbled for the opportunity given by the professors, and they are very cordial, and thank each one of them. Thank you so much.
Just 5 minutes question hour. Questioning hour as usual. If you want to any doubt, if you have any doubt, you may ask. Last 5 to 10 minutes questioning hour. Anybody wants to ask the question? Dear students,
you can ask me why it is 45 to 55 questions for a tool. Okay. Why there is a need for minimum number?
If you are not asking even a single question, what I understand, you are unable to understand what Sir says there. Can I conclude that hypothesis?
No. Even if they understand completely, they know.
Sir has effectively explained, but you are not unable to ask even one question. What is the reason?
They have understood everything.
They understood everything. Two probabilities are there.
It is actually the area is a complex area, and even in MEd or even in MPhil or PhD, this particular area is not thrown much weightage. Why? Because it is just considered as a theoretical part for 5-mark question or 10-mark question. But once it is with the software application, we are forced to learn all this. If there is any question, you kindly.
Sir, catalog review.
Catalog reviews are internationally accepted reviews, because if you write a review and give it to me, I have a software in my mobile that tells whether that particular review is a standard review. Simply you can write something and you can put a foreigner name there. There is a possibility, no? Many PhD scholars will do that. They don't find the significant reviews, they simply write 3 or 4 lines, they take some name, they put it there. And that particular context of lines they have presented will not be in connection with the name they have given. So if it is a catalog review, that is why I mentioned catalog reviews are easy to verify. Actually, many of the Eastern nations reviews are not catalogued actually. are not completely catalogued, are not catalogued at all. East Asian, like what we do in UAE, our Indian context of Chinese, China, Japan, all this. Certain studies are catalogued, but when you go for Western studies, almost any study is a catalog study. If I say James Mackle, immediately you can type James Mackle. You can find. I even can tell the area of the study of James Mackle, and you can immediately find University of Central Oklahoma, James Mackle, aged 83. The study is this. Okay, this is the advantage of why we need to go for catalog. If it is Madhu Narayanan, we should not think Madhu Narayanan is a person who is doing a study in India. He is with Portland University. So he has studied in one area. He has done a study in one area, and if the study is mentioned along with Madhu Narayanan, the catalog will tell you this is a very standard field. So most of your research is a very serious process, and nowadays the purpose of research is spoiled actually with the coming of the many private institutions. I'm very sorry to say, I'm not complaining. The seriousness of how they deal with research is becoming very less, especially in social sciences, because social sciences will not have immediate effect, but social sciences is the basis for creating a theory. Please understand, social science research is very important. Why? Because only by the outcomes, only by the findings of social sciences research, a new theory is emerging. Okay, ultimately theories emerge. You are doing a new you are doing a study on new area. Ultimately, where you will find the subvariables, how to find subvariables. Actually, if you do a mental health study, there are certain international studies done by Ian and Thorpe. Ian and Thorpe is the standard name for mental health. In the Indian context, Srivatsava is the standard name for mental health. So by comparing these two, you can have certain dimensions like positive self-integration, autonomy, all that, goal orientation, all that. But when you say you are doing some study on differentiated instruction, you will not find any subvariables. Then how to have subvariables? You should go to the theory. Identify specific terminologies that are used in the theory. So select those terminologies, get expert opinion. Select 4 or 3 terminologies, so those are the dimensions of that particular variable. So many social sciences will give you evolving theories, okay, and your study will come with a theory. So somebody has done a study in NCRT. When you place a newspaper in the corner of the classroom, it will motivate the students to read newspapers every day. So that is a basic research done with RIE Mysore, and ultimately one concept emerged called learning corners. There is another concept called 5E, present day. In the present day context, we write Herbatian lesson plans. Actually in NASA, they have one concept called 5E concept, like explore, explain, elaborate, okay, like this they have 5Es. They are using it for many other purpose of solving a problem, of how to approach a problem and all that. One person called Roger Bybee has done a study that when this particular concept is introduced in schools, science learning will be better. So this is one simple study. Now all the NCRTs for science lessons, for the teaching of science lessons, they use 5E format lesson plan. Whether it is RIE Mysore or Central University of Tamil Nadu or whether it is NCRT Delhi, they are following this particular model. Okay, so likewise, please do take research seriously, and in the process of research, you understand many things, and please try to refer to books. Your mobiles are not ultimately for a serious learning. You should either have a laptop or even if you have a laptop by itself is not complete actually. You should then have a mouse and your keyboard. So serious researches serious studies will not happen with your mobile. Okay, so see that you refer to books. By coming to know many books, your personality will get strengthened. Once you carry a book, simply whether you read it or not. I carry one book during my PhD on curriculum, one book by Michael Golby. That is the Bible for curriculum. Nowadays, many of them, they do not know the value of that particular book. The other book by Herschel Thornburg. So those 2 books are the Bibles of curriculum. Everything about curriculum you can find it in Michael Golby book. So that is the power of the physically available textbooks. So please go through it. Louis Cohen is one wonderful book. and Matt Henn, Mark Weinstein, Social Sciences Research, all these are wonderful texts. Tomorrow I'll give you a list of books if you are really interested. So with this I think I can take my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। शैक्षिकशोधविषयिण्याः कार्यशालायाः अस्याः षष्ठदिनस्य चतुर्थसत्रेऽस्मिन् स्केल्स् आफ् मेजर्मेण्ट् इत्यस्मिन् विषये आचार्याः डॉक्टर प्रभुशंकर महाभागाः स्वीयविचारान् प्राप्तुवन्, अतः तेभ्यः नमोवाकं धन्यवादान् व्याहरामि। I express my heartfelt gratitude to you, sir. एवं च अस्याः कार्यशालायाः कारणीभूतेभ्यः अस्मानः विभागस्य वरिष्ठाचार्येभ्यः प्रोफेसर पी वेंकटराव महोदयेभ्यः एवं च कार्यशालायाः अस्याः संयोजकेभ्यः प्रोफेसर आर चंद्रशेखर महोदयेभ्यः एवं च सर्वेभ्यः अतिरिक्त सह संयोजकेभ्यः एवं च नवविभागस्य उपस्थितेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यः अध्यापकेभ्यः भागग्रहीतृभ्यश्च धन्यवादान् वितीर्य उपसंहरामि। धन्यवादः।